All right, let's talk about something huge happening in the world of logistics. We're witnessing a major shift, moving away from just guessing at our carbon footprint to actually knowing it with pinpoint accuracy. Now, if you're in the C-suite or involved in climate policy, listen up, because this is way more than just a new rule. It's a complete game changer for strategy.
So let's start with a number, 40%. That's a big one. What is it? Well, according to the European Environment Agency, if we don't get our act together, logistics could be responsible for a whopping 40% of all global CO2 emissions by 2050. Think about that for a second. For anyone in this industry, that number screams risk, it screams regulation, and it definitely screams reputation.
And that brings us to the big central question, right? How on earth can you manage a number that big if you can't even measure it accurately in the first place? It's pretty simple, really. You can't. To get a handle on this, you need good, solid, detailed data. That's where control really begins.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at the big measurement challenge the industry has been facing. Then we'll dive into the purpose-built standard that's changing everything. We'll explain this cool idea of rulebook meets toolset, and then get into the really important part, the strategic advantage for your business. And finally, we'll wrap up with what's coming next for reporting.
Okay, so first up, the measurement challenge. You see, for the longest time, the logistics world has been trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. We've been using these generic one-size-fits-all standards for emissions that just weren't built for the crazy complexity of a global supply chain. So let's get specific. The old way of doing things, with standards like ISO 14083-1, was like looking at your company's carbon footprint from 30,000 feet. It was all about the whole organization, using really broad averages. It's kind of blurry. But the new standard, ISO 14083, is completely different. It's like putting the supply chain under a microscope. It zooms right in on the actual transport chain, using super detailed mode-specific data. We're talking about a move from a ballpark guess to a real verifiable calculation. Okay, so with this huge need for better data, a real solution had to come along. And it did. This is where we introduced the two main players in this whole transformation: the GLEC framework and, of course, the new global standard ISO 14083.
And look, this didn't just happen overnight. It's been a journey. It all kicked off back in 2016 with the GLEC framework. That was an industry-led effort to get everyone on the same page. It worked so well that it caught the attention of ISO, the international standards body. They started a formal project in 2020, and fast forward to 2023, boom, ISO 14083 is officially published, creating one single global standard for everyone.
So let's be crystal clear about what this means. ISO 14083 is now the gold standard. It's the definitive global benchmark for this stuff. It covers everything: freight, passengers, even the emissions from hub operations. And really importantly, it officially replaces all those older regional standards, so now we finally have one harmonized global way to report.
All right, so if ISO 14083 is the big new standard, you're probably wondering, well, what about that GLEC framework you just mentioned? That's a great question. The key thing to get is that they aren't competing. Not at all. In fact, they're designed to work together, hand in glove.
And honestly, the best way to think about it is this. ISO 14083 is the rulebook, and GLEC is the toolset. It's that simple.
Let's break that down a bit more. The ISO standard, the rulebook, is the formal, globally recognized thing. It tells you what you need to measure and report. It sets the big principles. But here's the catch. It only gets updated every 5 years or so, and climate science moves way faster than that. That's where the GLEC toolset is so critical. It's the practical guide that tells you how to do the measuring, providing all the latest up-to-date emission factors and guidance. It's constantly refreshed, so you're always working with the best data out there.
Okay, let's get to the bottom line. For all the executives and policy leaders tuning in, this is the part that really matters. This isn't just about ticking a box or a boring technical update. Adopting this new standard gives you a real, tangible, strategic edge.
And we're talking about benefits that go way beyond just staying compliant. I mean, first off, your customers are demanding this kind of transparency, so you're meeting that need head-on. It's a huge boost for your corporate reputation. But here's the real kicker. This detailed data lets you get smart about your own operations. You can actually optimize routes, switch to more efficient transport modes, and cut fuel costs. All of that translates directly into a stronger bottom line and a serious competitive advantage.
So what does this look like in the real world? Imagine getting a complete, true-to-life picture of your entire supply chain. I mean, from the second a shipment leaves the warehouse all the way until it gets to the final destination. You can actually see the carbon footprint of every single leg of the journey: the truck, the train, the ship, the time it sits in a hub. With that kind of visibility, you can start making some incredibly smart decisions.
And this right here, for a lot of big companies, this is the holy grail. We're talking about Scope 3 emissions. You know, all those indirect emissions from your supply chain that have always been a massive headache to measure. Well, this standard is tailor-made to tackle that challenge. It gives you a credible, standardized way to finally get your arms around what's often the biggest part of your carbon footprint.
Okay, so this all sounds great, but what does it actually mean for your day-to-day? Let's talk about the practical side of things and your next steps.
Naturally, the first question everyone asks is, okay, what's the catch? What extra work do I have to do? Do I need to start gathering a ton of new data?
And I have some great news for you. The answer is no. No extra action is required from you. The beauty of this is that modern reporting platforms and your logistics partners are already set up for this. They can take the data you're already providing and automatically map it to the new ISO standard and GLEC framework. It's designed to be a totally seamless switch.
Now, just a couple of quick things to keep in mind as you make this transition. First, don't worry about your old reports. Anything calculated under the old standards is still perfectly valid. This is all about moving forward. And second, you might see some small changes in your new emissions totals. Don't panic. It doesn't mean your operations have changed. It just means the calculation is way more precise now. You're simply getting that more accurate, true-to-life picture we talked about.
So let's wrap it up with this thought. For years, the conversation around sustainability in logistics was always fuzzy, because the data was fuzzy. But that's over. We now have the power to measure our impact with incredible accuracy. The game has totally changed. So the question for you isn't about compliance anymore. It's about leadership. Now that you have this clarity, this precision, how are you going to use it? How will you lead?